My name is Jack Wallen, and I'm here again to talk to you about being an artist. This past week, a meme went around the various social media platforms that was very well intentioned. It had something very good to say, or not necessarily very good to say, but something with the intent to help artists get through a rather tough time. Essentially, what that meme said was, even if you're not making any money with your art still matters. Well, I want to address that. I want to address that by putting some context to it, because memes are all well and fine, and you as an artist or a person could see that meme and read it and think, oh, I can relate to that, but it doesn't really help you. Yes, sometimes just voicing that statement or reading that statement, knowing that statement was shared with somebody else, can help you, because there is something good about the solidarity that comes when you know that your fellow artists are going through the same thing. But how does that help? And that's what I want to try to do today, is help you to put some context to that meme such that it might actually make you feel better about it. Now, no, I'm not going to make you start doing cartwheels and flipping out and singing songs and smiling from ear to ear because you're not making any money with your art, because, that hurts. Doesn't matter, that hurts. That's hard. But let me talk to you about it. I'm going to talk to you about it by starting in the past. Back in the 90s, oh, and by the way, I'm going to reveal a bit of information about my past that is not embarrassing, not to me, because what I'm going to say to you might make you cringe. It might make you go, oh, ow. I was still very proud of it because I was living the dream. I was living my dream. So back in the 90s, we're there again. Back in the 90s, when I was a member of Actors Equity Association, I have since retired from that. I'll explain that in a minute. I was making a living as an actor. I was a professional actor, and I did nothing but act. Yes, I went from stage to stage, from city to city, from state to state sometimes, finding gigs, because that was a big part of my job, was finding work. But I made a living, and I was so proud of it. I was doing, now understand this, and this is a fact from the 90s. I remember it very well. There was a staggering 98% unemployment rate among professional actors in the 90s. So I was able to count myself among the 2% who was actually making a living at it. Now, let's define making a living, because back in the 90s, and I still have one of my W-2s to prove it, I was making less than $15,000 a year as an actor. Now, I was also single. I was also living in a carriage house that only cost me roughly $300 a month rent. So I was actually able to survive on $15,000 a year. Now, I was eating ramen and Pop-Tarts a lot. In fact, I ate ramen and Pop-Tarts so much that I had people on my birthday would frequently leave boxes of Pop-Tarts at my front door, kind of as a joke, but also kind of as a we get it. So yeah, I was making about $15,000 a year, but I was so happy. I was so proud of what I was doing, because I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. Yeah, it was hard at times, but I did it. Now, fast forward to now, and I have since retired from Actors Equity Association simply because there's no work. In the city in which I live, it is impossible to make a decent living as an actor. Now, there's really only one equity union house, and they rarely hire local actors. They mostly just rent shows from other cities. They do sometimes do a local show, but a lot of times for the leading roles and the majority of the roles, they will hire actors in from New York or Chicago or LA or whatever. And yes, I could move. I could move to New York. I lived there for a while. I could move to Chicago or California, but the problem with that is the cost of living is so high that I would wind up waiting tables or doing whatever I could to survive, and I would be miserable. I have a lot of friends that are trying to make it in New York, and they are miserable. So I choose to have a higher quality of life in this city that I live in, knowing that I can't do the one thing I love more than anything to make a living. But in the process of me retiring from Actors Equity Association, which was not an easy pill to swallow, prior to that, I had added being a writer to my palette, to my artistic palette. And ironically enough, when I started to do that, my original thought was, the Actors Equity Association retirement plan is so bad that I'm going to have something else to bank on. I'll be a writer. I'll write books, and that'll be my retirement plan. Had I only knew. Had I knew then what I knew now. So the thing is, and this is yet another hard pill to swallow, that there aren't many writers out there making a living as writers. Now, I'm very fortunate. I do make a living as a writer, but not from my fiction. I write a lot of nonfiction, and that pays the bills. The fiction supplements it, but the heavy lifting is done by the nonfiction. And to be perfectly honest, writing nonfiction is it's absolutely not artistically satisfying. But, and this is a big but, I'm writing. I write all day and I write at night. And I firmly believe that all of that nonfiction writing, and I do a lot of it, that nonfiction writing helps to improve my fiction writing. Because I'm still putting words together. I'm still practicing the craft of writing. But at the same time, I wish so badly that the scales would shift so that the majority of my income came from my fiction, because that's satisfying to me. But if the nonfiction went away, I would not, and this is me being transparent like I am often way too much, I would not be able to survive on the money I make from fiction. And the vast majority, I'm talking like 90s era Actors Equity percentages are not making a living from their fiction. They're just not. And I have gone through periods where I have to ask myself, why am I doing this? Well, the answer to that question is actually really simple. And it's very similar to the same question I asked myself after I retired from Actors Equity Association and I started doing non-union shows. Because I had spent 20 years of my life getting a paycheck to act on stage. And all of a sudden, I'm doing shows where I'm either not getting a paycheck for doing them, or I'm getting a very small paycheck to do them. And I was constantly asking myself, why am I doing this? It's a huge time commitment. And sometimes it's a very frustrating experience. Why am I doing this? And the answer was very simple. Because I have to. Because to not do this is doing a disservice to me as an artist. So all of a sudden, I was practicing my craft, getting nothing financially in return, but I was still feeding my soul. And the same thing holds true with writing. Because I do ask myself this every once in a while. Why am I bothering? Because right now, the landscape is very bleak in the world of publishing. We are facing down the issue of writers using artificial intelligence to pump out book after book after book after book after book at an impossible rate that those of us who are not using AI cannot compete with. And even prior to AI, the market was already super saturated, such that very few of us could even be seen anymore. And now it's only going to get worse. The prospects are bleak. When you imagine the publishing landscape right now, it looks as if you imagine, close your eyes and imagine what you would think hell looks like. And that's the publication landscape. It's that bad. And a lot of writers out there are going, I'm giving up. I can't do this anymore. But if you are truly an artist, you can't give up. You can't give up on your dreams or your hopes, or, and this is even more important, you can't give up on yourself. You're an artist. Your prime directive is to create. So yes, even if you're not making any money from your art still matters because it matters to you. And sometimes that is the only driving force you need to move forward, is you. But beyond that, you never know. Your art, your book, your story may have touched somebody so deeply that it saved their lives. Imagine that. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of, pat myself on the back, I saved somebody's life. I'm just talking about the fact that you touched somebody enough so that they wanted to continue on. The most satisfying thing that has ever happened to me as a writer is when someone reached out to me to tell me that my books helped them through their recovery. No amount of money can touch that. None. That my work meant that much to somebody is amazing to me. And I'm so honored and touched that I was able to help them. And I had a moment similar to that back when I was acting. I was with a children's theater, and we were doing a production of Jack and the Beanstalk. And it was a participation play, which meant that the audience got to participate sometimes. And so I played Jack, and I was running around the audience and with the hopes of them helping me find the beanstalk. And there was a young boy in a wheelchair. And the look on his face, I mean, all these kids were up and participating, and the look on his face was down. He was sad because he wasn't able to participate in the same way they did. So I ran straight to him. I stopped at him, and I looked him right in the eye, and I said, "You're the only one that can help me." And his face lit up. And he pointed me to the beanstalk. I thanked him, and I went to the beanstalk. And that, right there, that little moment touched me so much that I have never forgotten it. When art can touch the human soul, you cannot put a dollar amount on that. And sometimes the human soul that the art touches just might be your own. And when it does, remind yourself that your art does matter, whether you're making money from it or not. And that's what I have to say on that topic today. Thank you so very much for joining me on this little journey I've created. I hope that I've helped you get through a hard time or entertained you or whatever. If I haven't, if you know somebody who might need to hear these words, share it with them. And if you don't even want to share it with them, just tell them that they and their art matters. And if you like what I've said, subscribe to my channel if you like. I'm not trying to make any money from it. I'm just trying to help people. And most of all, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day.